Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers, and everyone else tuning in for another live stream. In this live stream, I want to talk to you about what happened with the latest developments when it comes to the ceasefire. But before I get into that, I posted a couple of videos earlier on. You can go ahead and watch them. One with, again, Iran's reaffirmation about its position when it comes to the resistance. And the second one is fierce resistance from Gaza, continuing to land blows on the genocidal forces in Gaza. Also, before I go into the ceasefire, I want to talk to you about this inquiry that's happening in Israel, investigation more like, about the 7th of October. It's all a facade. It's all a facade. There's investigation, supposedly. Multiple mainstream media in Israel published details about it regarding the failure on the 7th of October. And what they're describing is a collapse. They had a collapse in the system. What collapse in the system? An intel collapse, a military collapse, and a civil support collapse happening. All of a sudden, this country that is one of the most sophisticated armies in the world, and the Gaza division, the most sophisticated technology when it comes to monitoring and sensors and what have you. All of a sudden, everything fails, and they try and hide the liability when it comes to the IDF, when it comes to killing the Israeli civilians. As a matter of fact, some of them blatantly said the IDF wasn't in charge of killing any civilians, something which goes totally against the witness statements that came from the day, evidence that came from the IDF themselves. They published videos, and obviously later on the kidnapped who were released, confirming that the Israeli army was targeting them. It's not gonna bring anything. It's just there to pacify the people, shut the people down so that they don't demand something more thorough. And it's most likely never going to happen, by the way. A full inquiry will never happen, in my opinion, when it comes to the 7th of October. And one interesting thing here, and this is linked to the ceasefire. You see, Israel just recently showed willingness to withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor through the words of Yoav Gallant, the defense minister. But now we had a speech from Benjamin Netanyahu reaffirming a couple of things. And many people thought that he is almost exploding the negotiations again, reaffirming that Israel will have the opportunity to continue with the war whenever it wants, and that they will remain in the Philadelphia corridor and in Rafah. They will remain there. Although just yesterday, we had contradicting messages and confirmations from the defense minister. Some people in Israel are saying that Netanyahu now is trying to blow everything up. He's trying to blow everything up. And that they want to remain in the Philadelphia corridor. They want to remain in the Philadelphia corridor up until they receive reassurances from Egypt, and they're requesting the Egyptian side to implement an underground barrier with very advanced sensors when it comes to Gaza to prevent the smuggling, to prevent the tunnels, and to prevent this. Okay. There's one thing that people should know. Israel just spent over 1.2 billion 3 years ago on one of the most supposedly sophisticated walls on Earth, with unbelievable amounts of concrete and steel and sensors under the ground and over the ground, because they have tunnels from Gaza to Israel. Yet with Israel spending over 1 billion on a wall over the ground and under the ground with unbelievable amounts of concrete and steel, new tech, sensors, cameras capturing everything in Gaza every few seconds, you had the 7th of October. You had the 7th of October. And that was Israel that built this wall, not Egypt. What makes anyone think that if Egypt does something that is going to be effective? And will the Egyptians tell them what's happening exactly? They won't. If anything is happening on the Egyptians. As a matter of fact, they said they already have things. And they took down the tunnels and what have, okay, from 2040. But anyway, that's what Israel is asking. Netanyahu's speech today, again, many people viewed it as something that's there to hinder the ceasefire. And when it comes to the ceasefire, we had new developments. These were published on multiple, quoted a few things from multiple media sources in the US, in Israel, and Arab sources too. What we're understanding, though, is that during phase B, that both parties did not agree upon, by the way, yet, Hamas supposedly agreed that they will allow an independent group of national people, Palestinian forces, to take control of the civil side in Gaza. Now, the wording is not very clear. The terminology is not very clear. And that's probably why they still don't have an agreement yet. Because on Western mainstream media, we had reports that 2,500 US-trained Palestinian forces, potentially supported by Arab countries, will take charge of phase B, or the second phase of the ceasefire, which will come into effect once both sides agree on it during the first phase. So there's already an understanding that we don't agree on phase 2, but let's go ahead with phase 1 if we can, right? And then obviously Biden introduced the continuation of the ceasefire if they don't reach an agreement during phase 1. But now we're having more signs of leniency from Hamas. But what are we talking about exactly? What are we talking about? And does that mean this is paving the way for a new rule in Gaza after Hamas? Okay. We had elaboration from Hamas officials. One of them was called Hussam Badran. Number one, that's why I said many things are not clear. He said that the agreement, the ceasefire agreement, the draft that we have so far, it does not include anything preventing Hamas from taking control over Gaza or being the governing body in Gaza. Okay, hinting that we're talking about something temporary. That's number one. Number two, the forces are independent and national forces that everyone agrees on. So they're not belonging to the Palestinian Authority of the West Bank, but they also don't belong to Hamas. Parties that people need to agree on. Then we're talking about a temporary thing. It only spoke about phase 2. Why didn't it talk about phase 3? If this was a plan to take the governing of Hamas and control Gaza, have different forces, why is it only restricted to phase 2? We're due to receive more aid in phase 2, and Israel doesn't want Hamas to take that aid because they always claim that Hamas steals all the aid and they don't give the people anything. Okay. Let's say these forces actually came in, because so far we don't have a full agreement, but we are understanding that Hamas is showing leniency. And before, they used to state that no force will come to Gaza unless it's with the acceptance of the Palestinian resistance. Otherwise, we will view them as occupying forces and will treat them as such. So they technically didn't go against their word. And if they're agreeing on them, question is, who will they be? How heavily armed will they be? What kind of control will they have? Let's say they're there. They're there temporarily. If they're there temporarily, then their mission must end at some point. Let's say they're there temporarily and they try and do something else. It will end in utter failure. It will end in disaster, in all of them being taken down. This is why? Because you had an army with 2 divisions being in Gaza at one point, over 90,000 troops in one point of the army, the genocidal army that wants to eliminate everything, and they haven't taken Hamas. What are 2,500 armed people going to do in Gaza with everything functioning? Okay. Another problem that Israel has is armed people going back to the north. This is another problem that Israel has when it comes to the negotiations. Okay. Hamas is insisting that, no, everyone should go to the north without checks. Israel had a clause to check them, and that will obviously be through what? The Netzarim line in the middle. And that's why Hamas is asking to remove that Netzarim line. Okay. But let's say first phase, they haven't withdrawn from everywhere. They're going to withdraw from the highly populated areas. They're still in parts of those areas. Hamas saying you can't check them. You cannot check people who are going to the north. Fact of the matter is, Israel wasn't checking many of them when they were going in without a ceasefire. During that period that I personally called the semi-ceasefire, or when we had the initial temporary ceasefire. There were back and forth problems, but many people went without being checked. Okay. Firstly, there are already armed people in the north. Secondly, Israel is asking the US to reassure them that if Israel does find out that there are armed people in the north, they would have the right to restart the war. This is another problem. So far we have several problems. The withdrawal from the Philadelphia corridor, it looks like the Netzarim thing is sorted, by the way. The armed people going to the north, restarting the war that Benjamin Netanyahu is talking about. And clearly we have something with other forces being in Gaza temporarily, officials, people with relevant background, up until we get everything sorted. What Netanyahu said today, it caused a lot of problems. And many people, both in Israel and from the Palestinian side, are saying that he can explode them. The risk of exploding them, by the way, means returning to point zero. Returning to point zero, meaning everything when it comes to the negotiations that we've had so far, that's it, done. We're going to have to start from the beginning. Israel, in the meantime, is trying to apply pressure on the population by continuing the genocide. Continuing its aggression, killing people for fun. Obviously, the ICJ and, International Court of Justice order, that's nothing, it didn't do anything. Israel killed an additional 20,000 since the court order came, and nothing's stopping them. And they're hoping to apply pressure on Hamas in the final stages so that they can give in. And although they are showing leniency, they have certain lines that they will not agree upon. So far, we're not seeing closure when it comes to this. The line of the negotiating delegation led by the head of the Mossad is leaning more towards Benjamin Netanyahu now, by the way. We previously had some sorts of disagreements because the delegation consists of many people, including the head of the Mossad. And now the head of Mossad came up with a statement today in which he said the prime minister is right in being stubborn when it comes to certain conditions, because that's what's going to secure our peace, what's going to secure us eliminating all of these things. So no deal yet. The question is, what will happen with the next round of negotiations? Not the next round of negotiations, next time the negotiating delegation will meet with the mediators, what type of response they will have, and will they elaborate on the prime minister's comments? Because, by the way, the prime minister's comments, many people view them as something external to the actual deal, as if he's talking on his own. Like one of the analysts the other day said, it's as if we have two Benjamin Netanyahus. We have a Benjamin Netanyahu for one thing and another for saying other stuff. It's as if we have two people. Is he doing it for his base? Is he doing it as pressure on the negotiating delegation? Clearly, if an agreement happens and he agrees on it, it doesn't matter what he says. You can say whatever the hell you want to say. But we have a ceasefire agreement, and that is not there yet. And that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. Let me open the space up for the community. I hope everyone's doing well. Infinite Content, thank you so much for your super. Infinite Content saying, hey Mahmoud, on a lighter note, who do you think wins the 400 track in the Olympics, US or Jamaica? Tough one. I'm not well informed on that, to be fair, to provide an opinion. But you have really good sprinters from both Jamaica and the US. It would be interesting to see. Now, obviously, all eyes on Spain versus England. That's going to be very interesting. Okay. So we don't have many questions today. In which case, obviously, I'll give you a couple of seconds to see if anything comes in. Okay. Mind over matter. Hi, Mahmoud. Today at the NATO summit, they were blaming China for everything. What's your take? That's a continuation of the same thing that they're doing all along, blaming China for everything. You know, you have aircraft carriers in the South China Sea, US bases, fighter jets there 24/7, and they're saying we're intimidated by China. What do you mean? You're on their borders. It's like, someone standing next to your house with a gun or pointed at your house and saying, I'm intimidated by your presence. Get out of there. It's the typical nonsense coming from the NATO, I posted a photo earlier on with, was a few years back, caricature of Biden, Johnson, and another NATO leader standing on piles of bodies of people from all across the world and saying, yeah, blame China. Blame Russia, look at Russia, look at what Russia's doing. Dude, you committed mass genocides. What are you telling me about China and Russia? Look at what you're doing. Typical hypocrisy. And by the way, one thing here, they also deflect, from the fact that they are a threat to international security. There are certain terms that we're used to, that are used on the opposite side, where in fact and throughout so many decades and with so much substantial evidence, it's them who are the international threat to security. It's them who are reckless. It's them who are warmongers. It's them who commit crimes against humanity and support criminals and support dictatorships across the world. China and Russia, they don't have 2% of the aggressiveness when it comes to foreign policy that the US has. And they're holding Europe obviously like a dog, and they do whatever the US wants. There's some people in Europe are sick of it. And when I say the US, I mean with the US administration, of course, because the US people are sick of the US government anyway. So all of these things, they need to be reviewed. Oh, international, global threat and no security. What are you talking about security? You're causing havoc everywhere and complaining about lack of security or people hating you, or it's like Israel committing crimes against humanity in the name of Judaism and crying about anti-Semitism. What the hell is wrong with you? You're spraying Stars of David all across Gaza and on the bodies of Palestinian people, and you're crying about anti-Semitism or anti-Judaism, to be more accurate? What kind of people are we talking about? The twisted people. Kate is saying, does that mean Hamas will retain the governing power in Gaza? Hamas will remain the power in Gaza. You can have 2,000-3,000 people over the ground or whatever. The forces will be under the ground. Whenever a move needs to be taken, they'll pop up and they will do whatever they want. And they've done that with, again, close to 100,000 Israeli troops. Genocidal, barbaric, child-murdering forces. So what's anyone else going to do? Take a couple of positions? What? In order to reach a solution? So in effect, they will still ultimately have the power. And again, don't forget, right? They used to say before, and you need to understand where we reach, because some people might say now, oh, Hamas, they're giving up. Benjamin Netanyahu's aim was to eliminate the Hamas. We will never accept any Hamas presence in Gaza. He was talking about de-radicalizing Gaza. Instead of de-radicalizing this depraved nation, he was talking about de-radicalizing Gaza. And we won't accept Hamas being there, we won't accept anyone being there. Where did that all go? That went down the dustbin. Why? Because these people prove that they cannot be eliminated by Israel. They're not going anywhere. What we're seeing going forever is the Zionist project. And that's why we're witnessing so much viciousness from them. And obviously, the more they are facing trouble, the more vicious they become, the more crimes they commit. But this is what we're witnessing the end of, by the way. Even if it's not through this de-escalation after this ceasefire, it doesn't matter. They've done irreparable damage. Teshiko, most update on Hezbollah, how they take this? Well, the latest confirmation from the Secretary General was that we will adhere to a ceasefire in Gaza without any need for negotiations. However, we will be prepared if Israel breaks the ceasefire and attacks Lebanon. However, we find that very unlikely, he said. So they're still with their same position that they will respect any ceasefire. As a matter of fact, he said in his speech yesterday, all of the resistance fronts will accept what Hamas accepts. So shows you the level of coordination. El Karaki, thank you so much, my brother, for your super. I love you, brother. Thanks for your work. May God bless you. And may our people have true freedom, inshallah. Ameen, my brother. Thank you so much. Much appreciated, my friend. Virzak, no. You asked me about a certain panel. I haven't seen that really. Gullyberg, are you optimistic on a successful ceasefire deal? I don't base my view on optimism or pessimism. I just try and, read between the lines, observe what's happening. There are reasons to be pessimistic and there are reasons to be optimistic. In terms of pessimistic, well, look at what happened so far. We had Hamas agreeing on a ceasefire, Israel rejecting it. Benjamin Netanyahu always hindered things. He put in more obstacles, and now even Israelis are blaming him. There was an Israeli family member of an Israeli who is imprisoned in Gaza, saying that as usual in the morning they'll give us hope, and in the evening Benjamin Netanyahu will come up with new problems, new obstacles. The new thing is that we're hearing new statements and new things being discussed that were considered to be controversial before, like the forces in Gaza, like the Israeli withdrawal, like Hamas remaining in Gaza with its power, Israel by using its terminology in a sense of we don't want Hamas armed people to be in the north. That means effectively they're accepting them being in the south. Do you understand? All of these developments signal that we're getting somewhere. However, the same people are leading Israel. So the same people who led us to what's happening are still running the country. And on top of them sits a narcissistic, genocidal psychopath. So does that give a lot of hope? Not much. But again, we were going to have to observe and see. There are signs that indicate that we might be going there. And by the way, in the next several weeks, it's not as if it's imminent. We might see a breakthrough in the next few days. We have seen several breakthroughs. But if there were to be another breakthrough or several other breakthroughs, that means you will potentially see a ceasefire, if everything goes well, maybe end of July or mid-August even, because getting down to the bottom of everything and drafting and making sure everything's okay, ensuring everything's implementable on the ground, all of that takes a lot of time. And the main reason for the delay really is that both parties, although Israel will not admit that, but both parties understand that reaching a ceasefire means reaching a ceasefire. It doesn't mean reaching a temporary ceasefire like before in Israel reigniting the war. That's why Hamas were so keen on these clauses, and even Biden had to go out and confirm that we will continue the ceasefire even if they don't agree on phase 2 when we're in phase 1. So they understand that. So that's why they have to wrap everything up very correctly. Israel wants the image to be as beautiful as possible to climb down the ladder, to make it a little bit easier for some in the Israeli public to swallow the pill, although many in Israel understand exactly what's going. But there's obviously a base. There's a base that Netanyahu is very concerned about, and he does not want to let that base down because that's the base that supports him. And he wants to show them dedication. He wants to show them that he is true to his word. He wants to show them that he's this hero, right? On the blood, obviously, of the Palestinian people and on the blood of the Israeli people as well. And again, many, many people in Israel say that, whether you're talking about the public or politicians or people in the security establishment as well. And that was from Gullyberg, and thank you again, my friend. And thank you for your membership. Franny, interesting. Do they need to rush into Lebanon to try and force the US to pull them out of Gaza and Lebanon? Well, Netanyahu's behavior is unprecedented towards a US administration. You know, regardless of how arrogant the Israeli presidents and leaders are, how arrogant, how entitled they are, they've been brought up on this entitlement and arrogance. They had some sort of respect for the position of the US president because they know they fully rely on this country. No US means no Israel. US stopping aid, there is no Israel. Israel will cease to exist. It's the US that's providing the oxygen and the blood and the bloodline and the weapons, everything to Israel. Without them, there's no Israel. So I don't think the US, although they tried a lot of leverage, are succeeding very well in containing everything to the level that they want. The administration is having minor successes here and there, but they are ultimately failing when it comes to controlling Israel. And that is something that people concerned about strategy and security in the US establishment will review very, very carefully after this ends. If this ends, if we have a ceasefire, and I'm sure many of these conversations are happening in the United States now, is this country good for us or is it bad for us? Even as a blank check for the military-industrial complex. Is it good or is it a liability? A country that has the potential to put all of our forces in the Middle East and beyond at risk for the sake of a person, is that a good country? Is that an asset or is that a liability? And mind you, that's disregarding the argument that says Israel is a liability regardless. It's only benefiting the elite in the US and the Zionist lobby in the background anyway, by the way. Because the average American person, what does that country do for? You know, they only take the taxpayers' money and they make the US image worse across the world, and any other country that supports them, that makes their image ugly, despicable. It reveals their true colors, shows their moral depravity and barbarism. So I don't think Israel is really interested in going on a war with Lebanon. They are threatening, you know, but they're toning it down slightly. However, at one point it will be inevitable because the level of threat that they received from Hezbollah in the past 10 months is unprecedented. And if we have a ceasefire and they go ahead with a ceasefire with Lebanon too, they don't do anything, put yourself in the shoes of the settlers over there. Well, are they going to go back? Are they going to be comfortable? Are they going to be reassured that they're going to be secured and, you know, they won't be invaded the next day? So, not at all. Studio Rainer, thank you for super. Thank you so much. You said, could the resistance release crypto addresses so the world could see citizen support? It could even make Iran backed harder to say. Well, I'm not sure if they do, to be fair. I mean, with regards to crypto, I would assume that some of them would, obviously. But then again, even if you're talking about crypto, everything is monitored. Everything that's done online, it's monitored. Even if you want to talk about crypto or dark web or whatever, these things are not to be trusted. You don't really know who's behind them. You don't really know who's behind them. Many things are shady. There are many scams happening with that. But I mean, yeah, they probably do use certain things, really. And another one, Studio, thank you so much. He said, another question, could BB be a rogue agent using the threat of nukes to force the US to fight? There is a war to avoid nuclear destabilization of the Middle East. Look, he's insane. He already tried to provoke Iran. He wanted the response of Iran. He was very happy, by the way, when Iran responded, Netanyahu. You should have seen his face. He was really happy because he was thinking, that's my time now. I'm going to escalate. People are no longer just going to talk about Israel. But Biden gave him the cold shoulder. He later got the cold shoulder from the commander of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And what they do, they don't want to go ahead with the war. They told him, we're not going to go in a war with Iran with you. It's not in the US interest to do that. If he does try that, they end it. That's it. They end it themselves if they do that. And the fact that a genocidal, war criminal state is being enabled to have these weapons, and is not even questioned by the hypocrite Western countries, is mind-boggling, is baffling, really. They're worried about countries getting nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Yet a genocidal war criminal state run by psychopathic supremacists, that doesn't bother them. Wow. And I think it's, it's really the nuclear option is something that's quite, there is likelihood, it's not that there's no likelihood, but that's like the last option. Because once you open that can, then you won't necessarily know how to close it. And it would involve the whole world. It's not like you can say, oh, that's it tactical, and I'm entitled to do that or whatever. It's not going to work like that. Other countries will be intervening. Fight Back is asking about the food, water, oil, medicines situation in Gaza. Bad. I mean, some stuff are going in, but not to the level required. If you're talking about the country committing a genocide, controlling the aid, I mean, that on its own should say a lot about the dystopian reality when it comes to the aid. So the required amounts are far greater than what there is now. Anything that's being sold is sky high due to the shortage of everything. So you need to have, you need to tenfold what's going in to make life, only from the consumer-based things, right? Consumables, normal, let alone about the destruction and all of the problems and the hospitals destroyed and everything else. We're just talking about aid. And aid is what? Is just to live, But the grand scheme of things, what type of life, tents, everything destroyed. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot to be done. Eileen Strange is there anyway, like Article 25 in the US for the Israeli government cabinet or Knesset to remove me before being crazy. No, no one used anything as such. I am not aware of an option to remove prime minister for like being crazy. There might be some laws that I'm not familiar with. What could have happened, and that's what led Benjamin Netanyahu to have the judicial reform, is not having a prime minister who's facing corruption charges. So he wanted to get hold of the judicial reform to control everything when it comes to charges, so that he can remain corrupt and in power. Faraz Hussein, thank you for your super. He said, what do you think about the Russia's attack on the hospital? Well, number one, it's disputed, right? You had Patriot, people calling it a Patriot. You had talks about Ukraine. What does it benefit for? What benefit does Russia have in blowing up a hospital? right? But if if all evidence shows that Russia attacked the hospital, that's barbaric. And any attack on a hospital is barbaric. And I haven't looked into the evidence, so don't take it from me as if I'm, I think the war in Ukraine should end and people should live in peace. But there were reports about a patriot. There were reports about Ukraine. Whoever did it is abhorrent, right? It's a diabolical attack. My 2 cents, yeah, a lot of Americans. Thank you so much for your super thanks, by the way. Said a lot of Americans support independence of Palestine. Your main problem is Hamas. You will not win this with guns or violence. Hamas has got to go. Firstly, I believe you're representing yourself. I don't think you talk on behalf of all of the Americans. And you, by saying our main problem is Hamas, firstly, who is us? Hamas is in Gaza. If you want Palestinian independence, you should support the independence of the people of Gaza, including their democratic will. If they want Hamas, they're entitled to have Hamas. You said you will not win this with guns or violence. Will the other side win this with guns and violence? And with regards to Hamas themselves, do you think they would rather get their rights with or without fighting? They already stated we would much rather receive our rights without fighting, but you're talking about a country that is a genocidal country. And again, your final notion, Hamas has got to go, you're totally addressing it in the wrong way, by the way. Hamas is a symptom. Hamas is a symptom to a virus. That virus is called Zionism. It's been controlling Palestine brutally, committing ethnic cleansing and oppression and genocide against the Palestinian people, supported by the United States of America, supported by Western countries. And if there's anything that's got to go, it's violent Zionism from the land of Palestine. And anyone who supports the Palestinian people should support their independent will and free will to choose whoever they want. And I hope that elaborates. Nappy Naz, you said thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you for your super, Naz. I just wanted to remind Americans on the 24th, NATO of evil is coming to DC. Netanyahu, show up to protest if you are in the MV area, inshallah, long live Palestine. Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of protests in the US waiting for Benjamin Netanyahu. It's shameful that he is, able to go to the US. But you're talking about countries that are more genocidal than Israel. What are we talking about? Kate, why is Italy involved in the land negotiation between Israel and Lebanon? If they are, they would probably be part of the international mediators. It's like with one of the bodies that is engaged directly in the negotiations between Hezbollah and Israel is the German side, the German intelligence. And by the way, the Germans, they mediated between Israel and Hezbollah in 2006, and they were able to reach, obviously, the ceasefire and the prisoner exchange. So I think many countries offer their services to mediate, including European countries, including some Arab countries too. And the way it goes is both sides view who can act with the most neutral manner and how can they get their benefits, right? How can they get where they want to get? So If both sides agree, for example, on Italy or on Germany, that means they have some faith in that, they can get where they want, although one side might be a little bit biased or whatever, but they think they can reach an agreement, or they can obviously let them have a try. Khadija Salam, what do you think of Turkey going to Iraq? Shukran. Well, I haven't heard that they're going to Iraq now. If they are, they would have a lot of concern with, obviously they're in constant fighting with these Kurdish independence movement, PKK. That's why they have presence in Syria too. And that's not something new. They conducted attacks in Iraq when the Americans were controlling Iraq completely. So to them, they view Iraq as an area where groups that are hostile towards them, they can conduct attacks from, and Syria as well. Obviously, with regards to the Kurdistan region, again, it's a region that's been split by colonizers to deliberately keep these problems, right? The Kurdish people are now spread between Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Iran, and obviously you'll have some sort of tensions. And the colonizers who split the region, they know that, the British and the French, like what they did with Palestine and in other parts of the world. Faraz Hussein, thank you for your super. He said, great answer. If anything, they're slaughtering IDF and the resistance fighting for Palestinian rights. Bibi seems like they amped up the attacks. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, the Palestinian resistance is a human right, an international right, and a God-given right, and no one on earth can challenge that. No one on earth can challenge that. And with regards to Bibi, they're raising the bar when it comes to the genocide to apply more pressure. You see, they use the people as a pressure tool. They kill people for fun. That's what they do. This is a genocidal state. And thank you for everyone else participating and contributing as well. Kate's saying, who will govern the West Bank? Will the Palestinians demand the removal of the Palestinian Authority? Look, many people have been demanding the removal of the Palestinian Authority, but what kind of powers do they have? Palestinian people in the West Bank are suffering from the Palestinian Authority and from the Israeli occupation. Palestinian Authority corruption 24/7, serving the occupier, and the occupier, they can do whatever they want, wherever the hell they want. Arrogant, racist apartheid. And there will continue, the problems in the West Bank will continue so long as the occupation continues. That's why to find a final solution to the whole problem is very simple and straightforward, but Israel never wanted that, never intended that. And what's that solution? Equality of rights between the Jordan River to the sea, simple. But they don't want that. Why? Because they are a racist, supremacist, colonialist project. And they happen to be terrorists who are enabled by Western powers to conduct their atrocities and barbarism, medieval barbarism and acts of depravity against the innocent indigenous people of the land. But what's happening now is the beginning of the end. You're witnessing the end. And the end doesn't come in a day or two. It takes time, but we're getting there. And I will wrap it up with Kate. That was the last one. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for participating. I enjoyed my time with you. Thank you to all of our members, subscribers, viewers, everyone who participated, anyone who commented. I'm sorry if I missed some of your comments, by the way. Many thanks to everyone who sent super thanks. Infinite Content, El Karaki Farah Studio, Faraz, Napinaz, and Faraz again, thank you so much for your super thanks. Apart from that, everyone, take care. I'll hopefully be with you tomorrow. I published 2 other videos if you want to go ahead and watch them. Apart from that, I will see you soon in the next video, and enjoy the rest of your day or night, and take care. Stay blessed, everyone. Peace.